Welcome to episode 107 of How About the Huskies. As always, I'm your host, Connor, joined by Matt and Andrew. And new year, 2025, new year, same Huskies. UConn moves to 3-0 in Big East play. Another game, second one in a row. Got a little iffy down the stretch, not nearly as much as that Butler game, but UConn held on in Chicago on New Year's Day to defeat DePaul 81 to 68. A game where Solo Ball went off for a career high 7 threes. It's the first time we've had a player hit that many threes in the game since Cam Spencer did in that Mississippi Valley State game early last season. So quite an accomplishment for Solo. Liam McNeely, unfortunately, did go down with that injury. We'll talk more about that. Alex Caravan was his usual self, dropping 18 and some clutch threes. I'll just let you guys jump right into it because we have a lot to talk about in this one. What was your guys' thoughts about the 2025 opening win for the Huskies?
I thought it was a great all-around win, and I'm just honestly pretty excited about the resilience of the team. McNeely goes down, DePaul goes on a little bit of a run, and you start to think, I don't know who said in the group chat, but when you were like, we're going to lose. And the game, the game like entirely switched right after that. They pull it to within 8, I think, was the closest, 8 or 9. Um, but Hurley gets the group together there. Solo Ball hits some huge shots, and um, you're looking at 3-0 now in Big East play going into the new year.
Yeah, that was me, half joking, half not joking. I mean, when they got it down to 8, I was like, this is going to be another one of those games, isn't it? But we ended up pulling away, and you could see when Liam went down, the team definitely lost a little bit of I don't know, they were doing really well up until then. They kind of like were shook, obviously, because you never want to see your teammate go down, and he went down hard. I mean, I know the announcers for that game were making it seem like he snapped his leg in half and there was blood leaking all over the court, but he really couldn't put any weight on that foot as James Duran helped him off the floor. I think he'll end up being okay. But yeah, Solo Ball is a big talking point for this one. Um, he's 2 for 3 in his last games. He had 22 against Xavier, then the dud against Butler, and now he's back with 22 again against DePaul. So he's definitely showing how good he can be. You know, obviously all players are going to have duds, but I mean, he just looked fantastic from three. The free throws, definitely a problem. He could have had probably 4 or 5 more points if he had made all his free throws. Obviously, not expecting you to make all of them, but he can't go one for whatever it was, 6 or 5 from the line. That's just not a great number. So, but either way, just he played fantastic. I think he's going to be the biggest talking point for this game.
Yeah, I want to start right there with Solo because early on in the season, the first, I don't know, maybe 10, 11 games, you know you're getting consistent double figures. He never scored more than 16. I don't think he ever scored less than 10 either for all of non-conference play. Now in Big East play, like you mentioned, that Xavier game, he had 22 points or so close to it. I believe it's 22. He had 4 against Butler, now 22 against DePaul. I mean, I'll obviously take him scoring 20 plus points and knocking down all these threes, but I'd rather him maybe stay at that consistent in that 10 to 16 range every game if it means we don't have to have a dud like he had against Butler. But he's a guy who I feel like is really coming into his own. I feel as a sophomore, we all talked about the sophomore leap before the year, especially after that URI scrimmage. But shout out URI, they're actually doing very well. That's an impressive win. I feel like even though it was in October to beat them by 25, 27, whatever it was. But Solo, I mean, now up to 13 points per game. I've seen a lot of comparisons, especially as of late, to Hawkins' sophomore season, shooting better from three is Solo Ball. Solo's shooting almost 45% from three. He's top 25 in the country in 3-point percentage. He went 7 of 9 in this one, and the 2 that he missed, he easily could have knocked down. They weren't too poor of shots, so he's definitely coming into his own as the guy who we may need to step up over the next couple of weeks. We don't know how long McNeely's going to be out with that sprain. I don't know if they call it an ankle or a foot. I feel like it was more of a foot, just looking at how it happened. But I mean, I wouldn't expect him honestly to play against Providence on Sunday. We'll preview that game in a little bit here. We don't know for sure though. Of course, he's getting an MRI today. He probably already did by the time I'm recording this, but there's no official diagnosis. But if he's out, maybe even a week or two, we're gonna need some points. Liam averages around 12 or 13 points per game. You're gonna need people to step up. Solo, I feel like has to be that guy.
I want to talk a little bit about Aiden Mahaney and a slight emergence, a slight show of a face from Aiden Mahaney. Only shot, I don't know what I think it was 3 of 7. I believe he shot 3 of 7. Better than shooting 0 of 0. To be entirely honest, he made some great finds. It looks like he's starting to get a little bit more comfortable in this role. I feel like Hurley obviously knows more than definitely knows more than we do. But I feel like this might be more of a project with Mahaney than a immediate impact thing. Obviously, we all know the talent that he has coming from St. Mary's, and I feel like there are going to be growing pains coming into a system like Hurley's when you're not entirely completely skilled in what he needs you to do. So I mean, he does have another year after this. I feel like we're going to see him start to get a little bit better towards the end of this season. You're going to need him to come the end of Big East and tournament play. And hopefully going into next year, I feel like the expectation might have been for Solo to leave. I'm not positive, but I feel like maybe that's what was going on. And next year if Solo does go, hopefully he does play good enough to be a first round pick. But I'm hoping that Mahaney can kind of slide into that starting role and play that sort of solo ball role and be very effective within it.
Yeah, I feel like people tend to forget, obviously the big thing this summer was Mahaney transferring here, and people tend to forget that he wasn't just some bum from some bum school. Like he was at St. Mary's, who's notoriously a pretty good basketball school. He put up fantastic numbers, and the staff thought he was good enough to be a starter in the beginning of the year. So it's very, very rare that you see an immediate impact. You have guys like that become good down the stretch, turn themselves into NBA players, but like Hawkins when he was a freshman didn't contribute a ton. Same thing with Castle in the beginning. Klingon, I could go down the list with everybody who's put on a Husky jersey. The idea that big transfers like that are going to contribute as much as they did at their other school instantaneously is just wrong, and I feel like a lot of people need to hear that. It's just wrong. It's never been right, and it never will be right. Um, but I just think in general, I think the staff definitely kind of talked to him because he was in his head for sure. He just looked like a different player after he had kind of went on that little rough stretch of not being fantastic after those first couple of games. But I think the staff talked to him, kind of got him in the right headspace. But I love to see him playing fantastic. I'm a huge fan of the kid. I think this role that he's in is perfect. I love that drive to the hoop that he had, and he can still shoot the ball as well as he could. So I'm really happy to see him kind of getting back to where we all expected him to be.
You could definitely tell on his face and his body language that he cares. This was something that I brought up earlier in the season two when he was on that big slump, and you could see him getting really upset with himself. And even in those moments where against Baylor, he hit those threes, and him and Hurley are going at each other already. I mean, you could tell that he wants to slide into that role so bad. He really does care. And you mentioned the the fact that he's a transfer, he might not do so well. I feel like as UConn fans, we've kind of been spoiled over the past few years. Last year, we had one of the best transfers I've seen in a long time, Cam Spencer, come in and blow up. He's now in the end. Nobody thought Cam Spencer would be in the NBA, playing valuable minutes this time 2 years ago, and then he comes in and he blows up. I mean, even guys like Joey Calcaterra are fighting for G League spots and came in and helped us win a national championship. I feel like it's very easy to get ahead of ourselves. Aiden Mahaney is not Cam Spencer. We need to be okay with that, and we need to be able to, roll with these punches that come with, growing a fantastic player.
Yeah, during one of Hurley's media appearances, I don't know if it was before the game or after the game, for the first time he mentioned Aiden Mahaney and Joey Calcaterra's name in the same line, which I feel like obviously when you recruit Aiden Mahaney, you're not recruiting him to be a guy like Joey Calcaterra. Your expectations are higher. But I feel like seeing him through now, what is this, 14 games, you realize that he may not be that guy you thought he was, but that's not a bad thing. Joey Calcaterra is certainly not a bad player. So if you have a guy like him, or a guy that at least can play his type of role, it's very valuable. And I feel like this game as a whole, it's against DePaul. I feel like you could learn a lot about your team in a game like this. I mean, DePaul, they're certainly improved. Chris Holtman has them in a great spot for the future. They are 0-3 in Big East play, but they've had three tough games so far. I believe actually they played Providence, so they probably should have won that one. That was with Bryce Hopkins though, so we'll give them a pass. But yeah, they're definitely not to DePaul of the past couple of years. They're not going to go 0-20, that's for sure. But this is a game where you could probably tinker with some things. The Huskies were kind of forced to tinker with some things. So McNeely went down just under, I was looking, just under the 14-minute mark in the second half. So that's 14 minutes without him. Hassan Diarra picked up his fourth personal foul at the 9-minute mark and didn't check back in until I believe maybe 2 minutes left. So you have a pretty significant stretch of game where you don't have your lead ball handler. And I'd almost go as far to say, as in the starting lineup, Liam McNeely is our second ball handler. So if you don't have your top two ball handlers out there, it's going to really be a test. In that lineup, it was Mahaney, Ross, Ball, Caravan. I forget, maybe they changed the centers, Johnson and Reed. But Mahaney played some valuable minutes. Sure that they coincided with DePaul coming back in the game. Maybe that had to matter. Maybe it didn't. I don't know. But just having him play 16 minutes after even earlier in Big East play 2 games ago against Xavier in an overtime game, he only played three. It just shows that Hurley is gaining trust in Mahaney. And I feel like we're only going to see maybe not his minutes increase from 16, but I think we'll easily see around 12 to 15 a game. Hopefully more often with next to Hassan Diarra. I feel like especially if McNeely has to miss any time, we need other guys out there. We can't just have Mahaney be a Diarra backup. But yeah, I'm really impressed with what I saw from Mahaney in that one, even though, like you said, he didn't shoot the best, but he had some tough takes to the rack. Who haven't we really touched upon yet from this one? While we talked about DR, 9 assists, he has been awesome as a floor general. I heard him on the CBS Sports broadcast. They called him the general. I know UConn Twitter kind of gave him that nickname, or it was Hurley. Someone gave him that nickname, but it's sticking, and he is the general. He's had at least 5 assists in every game since he entered the starting lineup. His average is well over that. I didn't calculate it out, but it's got to be at least 7. He is someone who we do. He's a solid sixth man last year. What would he do in extended minutes this year? We know he can score in bursts sometimes. He's not the best shooter, but 7 points in this one, had some nice drives. He missed that blatant layup. I mean, that's an unfortunate miss early in the game. Just that happens. But 9 assists, just a stellar Hassan Diarra game. Kind of stay out of foul trouble, but luckily, when you're up by 20 against DePaul, you can afford to get into foul trouble. If you're going to do it then. But yeah, overall solid game from Haas.
I want to say in a way I was in quotations wrong about Hassan Diarra. I was saying I remember pretty vividly that he was only gaining these stats due to his increased minutes, which just doesn't seem like the case anymore. It seems like even if he was out there for 20 minutes, he would still put up 6 and 6. And I mean, those are going to be the most important 6 and 6 of the whole game. He's our most level-headed player, I think. I mean, even above Caravan, Haas is definitely the most important player to this team. I would say as our general, if we lose Haas, I don't know who's going to run that point position. And I feel like just that safety net of Hassan Diarra out there, 35 minutes a night, can't be overstated. Him and AK are kind of like, that duo, these upperclassmen duo. So they do kind of go hand in hand, but I would give that edge to Haas there. Of you need him or you're going to lose.
I don't remember exactly what it was, but I saw something from Rothstein, and it was like Hassan Diarra now has 45 steals to 9 turnovers or something like that. And people don't realize how good that actually is. Like, you got to realize that that is ridiculous. He's just fantastic passer, and I really like to see him ramping up his minutes. I mean, I don't know where Amon Noel is. I would like to see him when Haas goes out of the game, but I mean, obviously we're not the coaches here. But I'm just really happy to see Haas getting the recognition he deserves, because I feel like he was one of those guys that never really got recognized during the 2 national championship seasons. So I'm really happy to see him getting that recognition now.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Noel because I was gonna go there pretty soon. I feel like he's gotten buried. The injury does not help. He played well in that last bye game against Maryland Eastern Shore. He had 5 assists. I think maybe 5 points. I forget exactly his point total. But he got injured after that. Didn't play in any of those 3 Gonzaga, Baylor, Texas games. Has not seen the floor yet in Big East play. So I don't know when we'll see him because I imagine this would be a perfect game to maybe deploy him a little bit when you're up by 20. Obviously, maybe he didn't want to do that early because they started cutting the lead down and they didn't want to throw him in there. But if you have Diarra in foul trouble and you have Mahaney, who he's clearly at a disadvantage. I hate to say that, but like every time they were doubling him, they were pressing Mahaney, they weren't pressing Diarra. The broadcast even caught it. Now that Mahaney's in the game, they're going to put some pressure on him bringing up the ball. Put in Noel there. Obviously, you don't want to throw him in for the first time with 5 minutes left when they're kind of on a run. But I feel like if you're not going to play him against DePaul when you're up by 20, when are you going to play him? I mean, sure, maybe I'm going back to the McNeely injury again. If you're down a guy, maybe he could steal a couple minutes here and there. But I don't know. I feel like it sucks that the injury is the reason that he's probably not playing. Because if he wasn't hurt, he would definitely have suited up, maybe released a few minutes in that Baylor game, the Texas game following that, and he'd probably still be in the rotation unless he played poorly. But yeah, I know it's unfortunate. But am I surprised? Not really. Just how Hurley operates with his freshmen, unless you're like a 5-star like Castle, McNeely. Like last year, Solo Ball made 10 starts and was not in the rotation at all during Big East play. So this isn't something new. But yeah, I feel like Noel's gonna make an impact. I just don't know when that'll be, how soon that'll be, but I feel like it's coming.
I feel like with Noel, it's very 50-50. I feel like it's kind of odd. You don't need Noel here to win games. You don't need Noel to win you a game at DePaul. When you need Noel is later in the season when you're going into Big East play and that rotation shrinks. Like one thing could go wrong and Ahmad Noel could be the backup point guard. I find it a little weird that he's not getting at least a little bit of run, just so that he's ready for when or if that moment comes. We saw it last year. I like to bring it up a lot. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Jalen Stewart. Stewart really didn't have a role within the team most of the Big East preseason, whatever the tournaments. But once the Big East tournament came around, he was one of our most important players. Um, Seems like Hurley had him ready, regardless of the PT, and I feel like the same thing's going to happen with Noel. But I would not be surprised if towards the end of the Big East season and into Big East play, we start to see more of Ahmad Noel, and he starts to impact the game in more ways than one.
And I don't think it's going to be like a slow arrival, like he's going to play 3 minutes here, then ramp up. I think out of nowhere, I don't know when it'll be. He might play 10 minutes. He might score 4 or 6 points and get a couple of assists, and that'll start something. I feel like we've seen that in the past. Like you said with Stewart in the Big East tournament, he was playing. He played every game in small portions off the bench, but to score, I believe it was 8 points, then 7 points, something like that in those last two Big East tournament games to really help the Huskies win that title. And then he was obviously important to winning the national title. I feel like we could see something similar to that, but I feel like say like Mahaney goes down or Diarra goes down. Noel's obviously next in line, but he hasn't gotten any reps. He hasn't played in the game since November 30th. I mean, it'd be nice to get him in there just for a few minutes, a few valuable minutes, I should say. Not don't throw him in there when you're up by 30. They will do that, don't get me wrong, but throw him in there in the first half for a couple of minutes, see what he can do. They did that out of Maui after he didn't play, I believe, in that Memphis game, and he put up some solid numbers in the last two games in Maui. Unfortunately, the Huskies lost them both, but it shows he can play against this top competition. But I'll close the point on Noel. We're going to see him soon. I feel like don't write him off yet. I mean, I understand if you do because he hasn't played in over a month, but I feel like his time is coming. Almost done with this DePaul game. Not much more to say. We haven't really talked about center, but I feel like center almost isn't a talking point in this one. That's not a bad thing, but Samson, 10 points, four assists, which is surprising, 3 rebounds. Terrace put up 4 and 7. So not stellar games from the center, but with guys like Solo hitting 7 threes, you don't really need that. I don't think we even really need to talk about the center position. Last guy I really want to talk about, we'll talk about Stewart as well because he's kind of in the same category, but Jaden Ross. What you guys think of Jaden Ross in this one? He was tasked with playing probably more minutes than he would have because McNeely went down. Defensively, he had 2 blocks, he had a steal. He looked very poised out there. He had that nice finish on a nice find from Mahaney down low. Overall, a solid game for Ross, a guy who I feel like could honestly step into the starting lineup potentially if McNeely's down with an injury.
I'm going to be 100% honest here with Jaden Ross. He's the rawest basketball player I've seen in a very long time. The talent is very obviously there. He's super talented. He's super athletic. There's a lot of potential there. It's just about putting these pieces together. Lucky for him, he's only a sophomore. There's a lot of time to go here. And when you see games like this, just these athletic plays, that pass from Mahaney up and under, then that block on the other end, I'm pretty sure led to it. You could just see the flashes, and it's just like, when is this monster going to be unleashed upon college basketball? I'm not sure if it'll be this year, but the talent is very obviously there. In my honest opinion, we haven't seen a player like him, athlete wise, since book night. I saw a lot of the same things. I see a lot of the same, you know, flashes there from an early book night. I feel like with Ross, though, he could be better. He needs to develop. I don't think this is going to be a this year thing. It might not even be a next year thing. But by the time Jaden Ross is done here, I'm very confident he's going to be one of the best players we've had in a while.
Yeah, it's really weird to talk about a player like this because, like Matt said, the talent no doubt is there, but it just like when he's on the floor, I don't understand what he's doing sometimes. I mean, there's obviously he makes skill plays like hitting threes, well, not wide open threes, but when he hits contested threes, makes good blocks like that. But just in general, it doesn't seem like he's kind of just going through the motions with some of the offensive sets. It doesn't seem like everybody's hustling around the floor trying to make plays, set picks, and it just looks like he's going through the motions. I don't know really if I've seen a player like him. Obviously, like Matt said, the skill is 100% there. He's very athletic, lanky, can do great things on the basketball court, but I feel like it's just he's got to develop and put all the pieces together. And if he puts all the pieces together, he's going to be a fantastic pro basketball player. But I feel like at this point in the middle of your sophomore year, I feel like it's definitely time to start putting that together.
I want to kind of bring something back. I'm pretty sure it was 2 seasons ago. I would just make entirely baseless comparisons. I can't remember what they were entirely, but to me, and take this with a grain of salt, Jaden Ross is kind of like that guy in gym class who is like a star football player and can't make a layup, but on the defensive end, he just like blocks everything. He's the best defender on the court, and he could somehow dunk. That's kind of what it's like, and it just looks like Jaden Ross. At least to me, this is entirely me. Is head and shoulders like athletically more gifted than everybody else on the floor. No matter if it's our team, the other team. I just I just am so high on Jaden Ross. I just feel like it's a matter of getting these reps in and getting these games in and developing. I said he's one of the rawest players ever. I don't think that's an understatement. I think the talent is all there. It's a matter of cooking that steak up a little bit and growing as a player a little bit.
I mean, he is a sophomore, but like as a freshman last year, he didn't really play too many meaningful minutes. He did early on in the season. I think he was in the rotation for those like early bye games, those non-conference cupcakes. But he unlike Ball, who was in a little bit, and Stewart, who was consistently a guy who played off the bench, Ross was never really in the rotation at all last season. So I mean, obviously he gets the experience. He's practiced with the teams for what the past like 18, 19 months since he got on campus for the first time. So it's not like we're throwing him out there for the first time, but it takes time to do that, to have production show in games, is what I'm trying to say. He's not going to immediately come in. I know Hurley's raving about him. He called him a top 20 pick in the draft, all this stuff. He's not going to do that right away. He showed flashes of it in his first game, I believe, but since then he really hasn't. But I feel like I agree. The defense is on another level. It's a guy, I feel like Andre Jackson, it's not an exact comparison, but athleticism and defensively wise, I feel like it's not as far off as you think. Andre has him in the rebounding department, the facilitating department. So he's not quite there yet, but Ross is a guy I feel like that could maybe step up. Obviously, he most likely will be back next year if he doesn't enter the portal, which you never know with anybody nowadays. That could be anybody, but he's a guy I feel like next year could be a guy that averages what, 12 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, a couple blocks, maybe even two. A guy that can play himself into a first round pick. I know we were all over exaggerating after that first game against, I don't remember who it was, but we're saying Jaden Ross, first round pick, lottery pick. It obviously won't be the case, but yeah, he's a guy I wouldn't be surprised if he develops into an NBA prospect over the next couple of years.
And you bring up the Andre Jackson sort of comparison. I kind of want to just put in a quick point that Andre Jackson did also take a while. Andre Jackson wasn't a superstar his freshman year. I don't really remember much of his freshman year, to be honest. He was here for 3 years, right? Up to his junior year. So looks like we're kind of on that same trajectory here with Ross, and hopefully, the same result, national championship and an NBA draft pick.
I think we're done now with that DePaul game. Nothing else really to say. We'll move on to our next game, a preview. The good old New England rivalry, the Providence Friars coming to Gampel on Sunday at 2 p.m. start. The game on NBC, one of a few games that'll be on the NBC family of networks this year. What's your guys' thoughts going into this matchup? Because Providence, they're a team that they have had quite a roller coaster of a season, and it all really lies on one man's back, Bryce Hopkins. Hopkins, obviously, we know one of the most talented players in the conference. When he's healthy, one of the most talented players in the whole country. But is he healthy? Who knows? He suffered a torn ACL roughly 12 months ago from when we're recording this. He came back. He played in a few games. He helped the Friars pick up a big win against BYU, which is their only notable win so far this season. And then he played a couple of games. He played three to be exact. Then been out indefinitely with knee soreness, I believe. I hope the same knee that he's tore the ACL. If not, that's a separate issue. But they are really struggling without him. They're 7-7 on the season. They haven't won a game without Bryce Hopkins since November 19th. We're talking about November 19th. That's before Maui was a negative thing in UConn history. That's how long ago that was. But what's your guys' thoughts on this matchup? We don't know if Hopkins is going to play. They thought he was going to play last game. He didn't. It's really a mystery with them, really a mystery with the whole team. A team that is really underwhelming so far this season.
Yeah, they have not looked good whatsoever. This is always my favorite game of the year. I can't wait to be there for it. No matter how good Providence is, it's always my favorite game. Last year we had the Foul Fest game that took probably about 6.5 hours at Gamble. I know we all remember that one, but yeah, if I had to lean one way, I would say that Bryce Hopkins isn't going to play because I feel like at this stage, Providence is 7-7. There's no real world where they make the tournament unless they were to like go on a ridiculous run and win the Big East tournament and stuff like that. I just don't see that happening. So there's no real world where they make the tournament. So you got to ask yourself, if you're Bryce, is it worth it trying to come back and play this college season and ruin your chances possibly at being a pro by, hurting yourself more? Or do you want to, you chose the school for a reason. Um, this school is your home. You want to play for him. So it's a really hard decision. Obviously he doesn't want to play hurt. Um, but if I had to lean one way, I said he's not playing. But knowing us, he'll play, drop 40 points, lose, and then won't play again for the rest of the season. But yeah, I feel like it's a weird situation there. I feel like Providence, the way they've handled it, I feel like kind of comes into play a little bit. But I feel like it's a lot of it's Bryce's decision. But if I had to lean one way, I'd say he doesn't play.
I'm gonna be entirely honest. I'm very excited to not have to play Devin Carter. This is going to be a much more reasonable Providence game, I feel. One of the more reasonable ones in a while. No matter how good we are or how bad they are, or vice versa, I feel like it's always a tough game. The availability of Bryce Hopkins, we've beat it into the ground. I feel like that's going to kind of make it or break it here. If they do have Bryce Hopkins, I'm not kind of sitting pretty about this game. I'm not feeling super comfortable. Bryce Hopkins is a very obvious game changer. A lot of hype, coming into Providence, and when he's been available, he's met those expectations. So if he can play, I feel like this game will be a little bit more of a competition than if he doesn't. But I feel like regardless, these games are always exciting. The fanfare, everything that goes into it. It's a game to look forward to.
Even if Bryce does play, is it going to be his typical? Well, I guess typical doesn't exist because he's probably been on the restriction all year, but he's not going to play 30 minutes. I imagine he'd be limited in some capacity, especially coming back from soreness. But if he doesn't play, which I agree with you, Andrew, if I had to bet, I'd say he doesn't because it's just all the mysteriosity. That's probably not a word, but I'm making it a word. Mysteriosity around this whole thing. Looking after him, I mean, what's there really to be afraid of with this Providence team? Jaden Pierre is the next leading scorer at 12.6 points per game, and he's a guard who's smaller than all of our guards. You got Bensley Joseph, who transferred in from Miami. He's been solid. He's had some big threes for them, but outside of that, I mean, what does he really provide? Wesley Cardette comes in from Chicago State. He's had some big games, but again, Wesley Cardette doesn't scare me. Corey Floyd's their next leading scorer. I mean, come on. I mean, after that, they're big men. None of them are averaging even 5 points per game this season. So, I mean, this Providence team, they were built around Bryce Hopkins, and Bryce Hopkins has not played, and they're really struggling because of that. I mean, this is a game the Huskies should fairly easily win, especially with it being a gamble. But I agree, if Bryce plays, even if he doesn't, it's a rivalry game. Those games are always weird. I remember we opened Big East play with them a couple of years ago. We lost that game at home like 55-51. And it was just a game you expected the Huskies to win, and the Providence Friars ended up taking it, and they entered the top 25 because of it. Now, if they beat us on Sunday, they will not enter the top 25, but it's similar vibes where it's a game you expect to win, but if you come out flat, they could easily beat you. They have some interesting pieces like a freshman Ryan Mila, who's only averaging 4 points per game, but has had some big scoring outputs. But I think we'll do well. We know enough about Providence, I feel like, to maybe break out the good old matchups to watch. You guys have some. No, Matt, you're not confident in your Providence knowledge. Andrew, how about you? We'll do two matchups to watch then.
Okay, well, it's a weird one because obviously Hopkins would have that, but it would be Hopkins if he was playing. But they got waxed by Marquette, 78-50 at home. Obviously Marquette's very good, but if I had to go with a matchup, I mean, our good friend is coming back to Gamble Pavilion, so let's see how well Hassan Diarra solo ball guards Corey Floyd Jr. He's been doing pretty well for them this year. I think he's averaging close to 8 points for them. He's started a bunch of the games for them, so he's coming back, and I'm curious to see how well we do against him.
I I'm not too well versed in my Providence lore since they've lost a decent amount of their players and Hopkins never plays. They're kind of in the gutter. But I was kind of gonna go with that backcourt just to see Corey Floyd coming back in a major role here. But I want to see if Hopkins doesn't play and McNeely doesn't play, how Caravan kind of takes control of this game because I feel like if it's just him in that front court with Terrace or Sampson, then I feel like AK is going to be a majority of the points there. I feel like we rely a lot on Liam to kind of ease that scoring pressure and that sort of facilitating front court pressure off of Caravan. Now that that's no longer there, I want to see Caravan sort of take over. So if there's no Hopkins, or even if there is Hopkins, I want to see Caravan go for 30 this game because I feel like that can definitely happen.
Yeah, with Caravan, and you didn't steal my pick. I wasn't to go him, but I want to add on to it. With Hopkins, when he's been out, Providence has started four guards. Pierre, Joseph, Cardette, and Floyd have all been starters with them, and they're all none of them I don't believe are even taller than 6'6", and they start a big man. But Caravan would have a significant size advantage with whoever guards him. And if it's someone who enters the starting lineup to guard Caravan, they're not better than Caravan because they're coming off the bench for Providence. So I agree, Alex should have a big game in this one. But I'm looking at that center matchup because Sampson and Terrace Reed are easily the top two big men in this game. I'm looking at Providence. They have Oswin, and I looked this up before and I forgot. Oswin Arunwuse? I don't even know. He's just very talented. He's a top 50 recruit this year. He's a young, talented player, but he's only averaging 4.8 points per game. Then they have a guy who UConn was interested in the transfer portal, Kreist Essendoko, who has pretty much fallen out of their big man rotation. I think he might be dealing with a minor injury, but even when he plays, he has not been productive. He's I don't want to be rude to Mahaney, but he's kind of their Mahaney situation, but like 10 times worse. They've transferred that's not panned out. And then they have a big man, 7'2", Anton Bonk, who didn't even play in their last game. I don't know what's up with that, but they have a very interesting group of front court characters. But I feel like this is a game where Terrace Reed can take advantage of maybe a weaker front court. Obviously, he's coming off the bench, so he may not play as many minutes. But I feel like this is a game you can see him get back into double figures, maybe a double double. After he only went for 4 and 7 and 15 minutes last game. But yeah, my matchup to watch is the centers, Terrace and Sampson, what they'll do against Providence. That kind of goes into the players to watch, kind of wrapping up this preview portion of the podcast. Who are you guys Huskies to watch in this one?
I feel like this is the first time in this since we've started this segment again that someone has doubled down. I'm gonna double down here on Alex Caravan. I'm gonna put all my chips in on him. I feel like this is his game to kind of take over and be the guy. I feel like with this UConn team, it could be anybody any night. Some nights it's Terrace, some nights it's Solo. Like last night, that's going to be Caravan. He's going to be the top scorer. I don't think it's going to be relatively close. If this game is close, he's going to be the guy at the end who kind of brings us home. I'm really excited to see him this game, kind of having that 3-4 all to himself. So I want to see him go off.
For me, this game screams give the ball to the post and let them go to work. Whether it's the lobs to Sampson or just letting Reed go to work, I'm kind of gonna take a duel. And you know what? I'm gonna take a position to watch, and it's gonna be center because I don't know why, but this game just screams that the centers are gonna go off and have a good game. So I'm gonna take the both of them because, like we just said, they usually play four guards and crease, so it's not like they're gonna have really a lot of big guys out there. So I would say the centers for my players to watch.
And for me, I'm not gonna go two because I feel like that's cheating. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go Jalen Stewart. I was with him and Ross because if McNeely doesn't play, one of those two is gonna enter the starting lineup. Stewart. I don't think we touched upon it when talking about the recap. Stewart he had pink eye, they said, over the break, and he was kind of still lingering, recovering from that. That's why he didn't play nearly as many minutes as you'd expect him to in that DePaul game, why he wasn't as effective. But I hope he'll be healthy for this one. I don't know who will start, him or Ross. Obviously, Stewart has the experience starting and plays the Caravan for a couple of games, but I feel like Stewart is a guy who, especially because he didn't do too well against DePaul, didn't really put up any production. He's going to be wanting to do better. We've seen it. We've seen him go for 16 in that loss against Memphis. We saw him score 10 points in that Gonzaga game, help us win that one. I think this is a game, especially if he enters the starting lineup, he could be a sneaky back in double figures. For him, maybe that's my player prop to watch, whatever you want to call it. I think Stewart's a guy who could maybe play in double figures if he enters the starting lineup, especially because he's going to have a size advantage. So he's going to be our three technically going against the Providence guard, maybe even Corey Floyd. I feel like Stewart easily can win that matchup. Floyd, he's a solid defender, but I feel like Stewart should be able to handle it. But yeah, Jalen Stewart, my player to watch. All right, that's it for the preview. Usually we're done after this. We have a couple things I want to touch upon, and then we'll end. First, so maybe some NBA housekeeping. Tristan Newton, unfortunately, was waived by the Indiana Pacers. I'm sure we all saw the news. I know we all saw the news because there was a lot of complaining going on social media. But I also saw that this was Newton's preference because he doesn't really see the fit in Indiana. He doesn't see a good path for him to get to the NBA, and believes he can get that elsewhere. Which, if that's the case, I'm glad he did this because I'd rather see him play in the NBA maybe for a worse team as opposed to play in the G League and put up numbers for a team where he's not going to get any NBA run. But he was producing for the Fort Wayne Mad Ants. He was averaging, I think, 17, 7, and 6. So it's not like he's struggling, and that's why he was waived. But I'm really excited to see who picks him up and where he goes.
Yeah, Indiana is a pretty guard heavy team. They have a lot of guards. It's very hard for him to play. Like he said, not a lot of sample size there for him. Played in just a couple of games. I think he did end up scoring his first basket. But yeah, I don't think Indiana was the right spot for him. It was great to see him get drafted there and get his shot. But I'm happy that he kind of sees that he has a better path somewhere else because it's taking initiative. You don't want to, when you're somebody like him who has two national championships, was already has his number on the wall, one of the best players on this team for 2 years, got national attention after a Kansas team. You don't want to just sit in the G League and rot because you're a pro now. He's hungry to go to the NBA. So I really hope that some team sees, maybe he will still be in the G League because it's hard to get up to the NBA. But I feel like he can definitely, go play for maybe like a Philly or a Washington. Somebody McCain's out for a while and Philly needs backup guard, so maybe there or someone like Washington. But he'll definitely play somewhere. He won't be unsigned for long. But I'm really happy to see him taking initiative and knowing his worth because he doesn't deserve to just sit on the bench.
Yeah, and if I was Tristan New and I was looking at Nemhard there up in the Indiana Pacers, and I'm kind of crapping my pants because we've seen all the flashes of Nemhard that we've needed to. Even going back to the playoffs last year, I had one of the most complete performances against the Celtics on that Indiana team, featuring Tyrese Halliburton and Pascal Siakam. And I mean, he still struggled this year to find the rotation. Seems like he's kind of getting a little more comfortable now, but all that guard depth, it's not going to be easy to find a spot on a team like the Pacers. And I agree with Andrew. I definitely agree that it was the right thing to do. If anything, it shows that you're hungry to continue to work hard and work your way up. So I'm hoping for nothing but the best for him.
Yeah, I agree with you guys to close the point. It won't be long till he's on another team. He obviously, I don't think he'll just go to another team and be a strictly NBA guy. I think he'll still have his fair share in the G League, but I think any team that signs him at this point, he's going to get a lot of NBA minutes just because I feel like teams take notice as well that he's taking this initiative. If they're gonna, this guy wants to be the NBA, we'll give him a shot, see what he can do. So yeah, glad he did that, but also, but without that context, I'm trying to say, it was a little strange that they would waive him this early in the season, really for no reason. But one last NBA note, this is a couple days old now. We haven't recorded since then. Cam Spencer. I know he hasn't really played too much in the NBA, but we all saw the clip of him starting that little tussle with Devin Booker. Talk about taking initiative. He's a rookie who's playing in his sixth NBA game. Devin Booker's a multi-time All-Star guy. He scored 70 points in a game, albeit like 10 years ago almost now. But usually you don't see rookies go up to the big guys like that and kind of just take charge. But Cam wanted that ball. He's saying, let's play on. I want this. I saw a lot of players were like, not players, a lot of people on social media were like, this guy needs the ball in his hands. He needs to keep playing basketball. But yeah, it's just awesome to see Cam do that. I'm not surprised at all. after what we saw from some of the antics he pulled last year. His fierceness, his competitiveness, not surprised at all.
My guy, I love it. I mean, he wasn't gonna take anything. He's Cam Spencer. He's not a soft guy. He's a very good basketball player. But I love it because everybody's like, who the hell is 24 think he is going up to Devin Booker like that? And what the world is going to see is that Cam Spencer is a very good basketball player. He's a tough guy. Obviously we saw his antics last year, but I love it because all these people just love to ask who these guys are, and someday Cam Spencer is going to prove that tweet's going to come back to bite him. But I love it. Devin Booker is also one of the softest players in the NBA, in my opinion. He's good. He's got some skill, but he is soft as whatever you want to compare it to. That clip of the Raptors mascot standing behind the basket, and Devin Booker threw a fit about it. So I'm not the biggest fan of him. I think he's incredibly soft. But I love to see Cam Spencer taking initiative. Teaching the people that he belongs in this league as well.
And to close that, he's through him doing that, it's also kind of similar to Tristan Newton taking initiative. He's a guy, obviously, he's on a two-way contract. He's not playing too many minutes, but he's not out there being all passive. He's out there being aggressive. Obviously, maybe you can show your aggression in different ways than getting double technical fouls with Devin Booker and starting a whole, not brawl, but tussle on the court. But I feel like teams notice that he wants to win. He's doing that because he wants to win the game. He's not doing that because he's angry. I mean, he's angry in the moment. He just wants to play, but he's has that winning mentality, the winning culture that he gained at UConn last year, and he's taking that to the NBA. So I feel like teams, the Memphis Grizzlies, should take notice of that he wants to be out there and win for his team.
And as the years kind of go on now, it's been, I think, 6 or so years here where these Hurley guys are starting to work their way into the league. And I'm noticing a very similar trend within all of them is that they all just love to win. They all want to win. And I mean, I can continue to talk and talk about how it's this mindset and this culture. But I even said last year how important Steph Castle was to the future of UConn, because if he went top five, I mean, that was going to change everything. I mean, look at McNeely now. McNeely is looking, to be another top 10 pick, and more top 10 picks are going to continue to come here and play here. But this kind of mindset that they have in the league, you can go down the list, even the guys, I mean, who have had success. Jordan Hawkins, Steph Castle having a great rookie year, Andre Jackson becoming one of the better defensive guys in the league now, to even guys who don't get much of the spotlight, Tristan Newton and Cam Spencer doing things for the betterment of themselves and or the team. And it's great to see. And I mean, you just love to see it, not just in terms of in the NBA, but for future UConn recruits who want to be like these players.
This isn't the first time this has happened this year. Both Hawkins and Jackson had their fair share of going at people. I forget who Hawkins went against, but Andre Jackson went at Isaiah Hartenstein, and I'm going to take Andre Jackson every day in that fight. I feel like Isaiah Hartenstein is also soft. Maybe this is just my bias, my UConn bias showing, but I love to see these guys like that. Some guys are just there's certain guys in the league, we won't go naming names, but there's people who get into the NBA and think that they're just set. There are plenty of guys that play soft, just ask for fouls all the time. I can think of one very, very obvious one who plays in the great city of Philadelphia, but we won't say his name. But I love to see these UConn guys, going into the league, proving that they belong there. And it's awesome to see because, we obviously, everybody knows we had our NBA talent, and then that kind of just went away for a couple of years. And I love to see all these guys starting to play a bunch in the NBA, especially guys like Tyrese Martin, 20 minutes a night for the Brooklyn Nets. Just love to see it.
Yeah, 9 Huskies currently in the NBA. That number will grow before it shrinks, I can guarantee you that. But last segment here to wrap up the show. Usually we do New Year's resolutions, or you do New Year's resolutions before the new year to go into the new year. We're recording this on the second, so we're a little behind. But if you guys had to choose a New Year's resolution for this year's UConn squad, what is it? And just, yeah, what is it?
I'm kind of going to go a little bit of a different route. And I want to kind of start to see the beginning of the Dan Hurley tree start to grow. Once the season concludes, I feel like there will be a lot of teams looking for coaches. And I do want to see guys like Kamani Young, Luke Murray. all these guys kind of start to, grow out and expand this Dan Hurley tree in this Dan Hurley world. I want to see these guys get head coaching jobs and, not just regular Iona head coaching jobs. I want to see them, kind of slot into some bigger schools. I feel like that's kind of the next step here in this process.
I'm gonna go with, and I'll hold myself to this. I will, by the last Big East game before the Big East tournament, when we do our Big East tournament preview, I will go back on this, and I will say that for my New Year's resolution, I want our points allowed to be under 71 and a half. I think that's a pretty fair number to say. I just really want to see our defense improve. Big East is a very tough conference, but I think it's doable. I did a little of the math in my head, not in my head, on a calculator. But I think that 71 points allowed per game on average is pretty doable, and I would love to see that. But yeah, I'll figure that out when we do our Big East tournament preview video and see if my resolution came true or not.
So I'm gonna go with defense as well, but it's good to know for all the UConn fans out there. Matt's New Year's resolution is to dismantle the program as we know it. And I know, I'm just joking, but I'm gonna say for my resolution, stick with the defensive side as well, because the Huskies, they're number two offensively in KenPom behind Auburn, who's looking like they'll beat anybody by 100 points at any time. We're number two behind them. Defensively, the Huskies are 95. So my resolution, I feel like I don't know what would be a stretch. I'd say at least top 50 by Big East tournament time. I feel like that's certainly doable with this team kind of gelling as we enter the new year into Big East play. So yeah, I'm gonna say top 50 defense on KenPom. I feel like we're currently 14th in KenPom. You get that defense to the top 50, you're easily looking at a top 7, 6 spot on that KenPom rankings, which of course doesn't matter at the end of the day, but it's just we've been used to being near the top and seeing us at 14th. It's not bad at all, but it's certainly lower than the Husky standards. But yeah, getting that defense up is certainly, I feel like, should be everyone's resolution. But yeah, that's mine. If you guys got nothing else, this was a longer episode, but that'll do it here for episode 107. Next time you hear from us, probably a similar recap preview, recapping what should be a Huskies win against Providence, previewing a game that might be tougher than some expect against Villanova in Philly. Obviously, road games are very tough. Eric Dixon's been playing out of his mind as of late. I don't know if you guys saw that Villanova, they went on a 22-1 run to end their game against Butler. They were down by, I think, 9 and won by 12 or something close to that. Maybe flip flop those numbers, but they went on a crazy run. So that's not going to be an easy game at all. We'll be previewing that in our next episode. But yeah, until then, thank you guys for watching. Stay tuned.